The best television ever made came out in 2007. You cannot buy a new one, and you never will. Barely 2 years after it launched, its maker walked out of the television business at the top of its game, while reviewers were still calling it the finest picture they had ever seen. That company was Pioneer, and the name probably reaches you from somewhere else first. The head unit you turned up at a red light, the receiver under the living room TV, the CDJ the club DJ played on. For decades, Pioneer was everywhere. Then it poured its future into one screen, a plasma set called the Kuro. And that is where the story of Pioneer as an independent company starts to come apart. Kuro is just the Japanese word for black, and black was the whole trick. The line Pioneer launched under that name in 2007 chased one number harder than any television before it: how dark the screen goes when it is supposed to show nothing at all. On most sets, black is really dark gray. The panel leaks a little light even on a black frame. Pioneer's engineers drove that leak so far down that in a dark room, you genuinely could not find the edge of the picture. Reviewers ran the same demo over and over. Kill the lights, play a night scene, and watch the stars hang in a black void with no box around them. Fast motion that smeared on other sets stayed crisp on this one. For a small tribe of videophiles and picture engineers, the people who argue about black levels the way others argue about lap times, this was the grail they had been chasing for years. Pioneer had just built it. Pioneer could build it, because Pioneer had spent decades being the company that got sound and picture right. The man behind that first single home speaker was Nozomu Matsumoto, who around 1930 heard music played through an imported hi-fi speaker and described the moment as life-changing, and set out to build sound that good for other people. In 1937, he finished his first, a dynamic speaker he personally named Pioneer, and stamped with the Greek letter Omega, the same mark the company still wears. He incorporated the business in Tokyo in 1938 around a single obsession: that reproduced sound could be made good enough to move a listener the way live music had moved him. Pioneer's stated philosophy to this day is move the heart and touch the soul. From that first speaker, the instinct never changed: chase the best sound in the room, whatever it cost to make. From that speaker, it grew into one of the names that defined home and car electronics: amplifiers and LaserDisc players in the living room, car stereos and tens of millions of dashboards. Through the 1980s and 1990s, the word did work no ad had to. At the counter, it told a certain kind of buyer this was the better version of whatever they were shopping for, and usually the pricier one. That devotion to high-end hardware was a dangerous reflex. Decades before the Kuro, Pioneer had bet itself on the finest format money could buy, and watched it lose. The format was LaserDisc, a silver platter the size of a vinyl record, mirror bright, that spun a film off its surface with a laser. It reached American stores in 1978 as MCA DiscoVision, a licensed technology Pioneer did not invent but believed in more than anyone else. Pioneer put out its own player in 1980 and never stopped. On paper, it was a rout. A LaserDisc carried something like 425 to 440 lines of horizontal resolution against VHS tapes roughly 240, close to double the sharpness, plus clean multi-channel audio the tape could not hold. By every measure a picture and sound obsessive cared about, it was the better way to watch a film at home. It lost anyway. The players and the discs cost a premium, and the format could not do the one plain thing that sold VHS in the years before streaming: it could not record. Setting a tape to catch a show while you were out was ordinary magic in 1985, and LaserDisc simply could not manage it. So the fuzzier, cheaper format that could tape television took the living room, and Pioneer settled into a role it would play for the next 3 decades: the format's champion. The people who did buy in were exactly the tribe you would expect. Starting in 1984, a small outfit called the Criterion Collection built the entire grammar of the premium home release on LaserDisc's spare audio channels and instant random access. The scene-by-scene director's commentary track was popularized on Criterion's LaserDisc of the 1933 King Kong. Letterboxing a film to preserve its true widescreen shape was popularized on its release of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, definitive restorations, multi-disc special editions. The whole idea that a movie at home could be a curated object. All of it was born on the format almost nobody bought at scale. They were the same species of connoisseur who 20 years later would rank the Kuro's black levels to the decimal point, and LaserDisc genuinely thrived where it fit. In 1982, Pioneer launched a dedicated LaserDisc karaoke player in Japan, and because a disc is random access and chaptered, a single platter could hold 24 songs and be cued like a jukebox, something linear tape could never do. LaserKaraoke took over the Japanese karaoke business in short order, and Pioneer carried it to the United States in 1988. By the end of 1990, by the rough counts of the time, LaserDisc sat in something like 1 million American homes, adored by the people it was built for, and never mass. Then Pioneer did something stranger than lose. It helped build the format that finally buried its own. Pioneer was an early force in the DVD forum in the mid-1990s, advancing the laser pickup work that made the cheaper disc possible, and it built LaserDisc and DVD combo players, the DVL line from 1996, to walk its loyalists gently onto the successor. The company that had championed the premium disc for 20 years helped author the good enough one that replaced it. So when the living room finally went from a bulky tube to a thin panel on the wall, Pioneer bet its consumer future on plasma. Two flat panel technologies were fighting for that wall: plasma, which Pioneer had committed to, and LCD, which almost everyone else was racing to make cheaper. On picture, plasma won. Deeper blacks, smoother motion, no argument at the high end. On the factory floor, it lost. A plasma panel that good was expensive to build, and LCD's price kept dropping as company after company poured money into it. LCD had more factories, more buyers, and a simpler path to bigger, cheaper screens every year. Plasma had Pioneer and a shrinking handful of others, and the energy efficiency pressure of the day leaned against the power-hungry panel too. And here Pioneer made the most Pioneer choice of all. It doubled down on the expensive technology instead of hedging. On February 3, 2004, Pioneer and NEC announced that Pioneer would absorb NEC's entire plasma display business, the subsidiary, its Kagoshima plant, the plasma patents, a deal completed that September 15th. Pioneer's stated aim was to become the largest plasma panel maker in the world, targeting output above 1 million panels a year. At the precise moment LCD's price collapse was gathering speed, Pioneer bought more plasma. Unwinding that capacity a few years later would cost it roughly 19 billion yen in one-time charges alone, a down payment on the disaster ahead. Picture the shelf in an electronics store around 2008. The Pioneer sits beside an LCD that measures worse in every way a reviewer cares about and costs several $100s less. Now look up. A showroom is the exact opposite of a dark room. Banks of hard overhead light. Every set cranked to maximum brightness. The one thing the Kuro does better than anything on earth, hold a perfect black, is the one thing you cannot see under those lights. From 3 feet back, under the fluorescence, the cheaper screen looks almost as good, and you are not a reviewer. You have a budget and a wall at home to fill, and several $100s is real money. You buy the cheaper one. Pioneer had watched this exact scene once before, on a different shelf, the silver LaserDisc, mirror bright and sharper, sitting next to a cheap black VHS tape and the same hand reaching past it for the tape. Multiply that one shrug across a whole market, across a few years, and it stops being a shrug. It becomes a verdict. Pioneer tried to have it both ways. It stopped making its own plasma panels to cut costs and bought them from outside instead, still selling the Kuro name on the strength of the picture. It was not enough, and the timing was merciless. As the 2008 financial crisis froze, spending around the world, Pioneer's television losses went from a slow bleed to an emergency. On February 12, 2009, Pioneer announced it would leave the television business entirely, winding down TV manufacturing by March 2010 to refocus on car electronics. In the same breath, it forecast a net loss of around 130 billion yen for the fiscal year, roughly $1.44 billion. It would cut about 10,000 jobs worldwide, full-time and temporary. Production wound down through that year, the last sets rolling off in the United States around April and in Britain earlier still. That spring, it agreed to hand its plasma patents and technology to Panasonic, a deal signed in May 2009. And it was not alone. Panasonic, which inherited the Kuro technology, would give up on plasma within a few years too. The whole industry was leaving the format Pioneer had staked its future on. 4 weeks before the television announcement, Pioneer had quietly closed its other great book. On January 14, 2009, it said it would build one final run of about 3,000 LaserDisc players and then stop for good, ending a 29-year run in which it had sold more than 9.5 million of its own LD players into a worldwide market of 16.8 million, having outlasted every competitor to stand as the format's very last maker. Its farewell read like a eulogy, thanking the players for having contributed to the audio-visual enjoyment of so many consumers all over the world. 1 month after that final LaserDisc run, Pioneer gave up the Kuro too. Twice, 30 years apart, the same company had built the most beautiful object on the shelf and closed the book on it inside the same 4 weeks. The silver LaserDisc in 1985 and the black Kuro screen in 2008, the same shrug photographed twice. The Kuro was Pioneer's oldest reflex firing one last time, a company built from its first speaker to chase the finest version of everything and never quite learn how to sell the cheap one. It would get no sequel, and the hardware only looked better with age. A decade after 2009, the 2007 Kuro still sat at or near the top of the best ever lists, a plasma outscoring panels built long after it. Clean used sets held their price, and owners hunted down spare panels to keep theirs alive. In 2017, 10 years on, a technology writer called his aging Kuro the best piece of tech he owned, a reference set with no company left to build its successor. The plasma exit hollowed out one specific part of Pioneer, the part that lived in your living room. The televisions, the reputation, the standing as the company that made the best picture money could buy. That was the piece that went, while the rest of Pioneer carried on, smaller. The company pulled back toward what it still led, car electronics and audio, and began selling off the rest. But one of the divisions it was selling had quietly done what the Kuro never could. It had won. Back in 2001, Pioneer had released the CDJ-1000, the first CD deck built with a touch-sensitive jog wheel and a vinyl mode that let a DJ nudge, pitch bend, and even scratch a digital track as though it were a record, with hot cues for instant markers. Paired with Pioneer's DJM mixers, the CDJ became the de facto instrument bolted into serious club booths across the world. The gear a touring artist rider simply assumes will be waiting on the stage. In the very years Pioneer could not sell the world its perfect television, it had already sold the world its perfect turntable. By the time the DJ business, the CDJ line the clubs ran on, went to the investment firm KKR in 2014, Pioneer was selling off its one still winning consumer arm to bankroll the ones that had lost. The home audio arm went to Onkyo. Pioneer staked its slimmed-down future on car navigation systems, the dashboard maps drivers relied on before every phone had one. And then the phone arrived. A free map app did to standalone nav roughly what cheap LCD had done to plasma, only this time the good enough option was free. By 2018, the losses had caught up. That September, Pioneer took a rescue of up to 60 billion yen, around $540 million, from Baring Private Equity Asia, an investment fund, cash in exchange for control. 6 months later, the rescue became a takeover. In March 2019, Baring spent about 102 billion yen in total, roughly $904 million debt included, to buy Pioneer outright and take it fully private. Pioneer delisted from the Tokyo Stock Exchange. An 80-year-old company that had set standards other companies chased went dark as a public name and became a privately held business built around the dashboard. Pioneer survived, smaller and quieter, no longer the household giant it had been. In the end, every sale was a vote no one thought to call a vote. and Pioneer lost the election one purchase at a time. If you want more stories like this one, the makers that built the best thing on the shelf and still lost the shelf,